yourself right now in a remote learning situation, you could use this tool to create better virtual meetings. You could even have your students add content via Google Classroom as well. So let's talk about some of those ideas. And one of those ideas right now is to annotate and draw. Did you know that you can upload an image or a screenshot, and then you could use the writing tools to write? So this is an example of something that we talked about in a science class with a science teacher that I was working with. We wanted to show the water cycle. So this is a worksheet that she had, and so we merely took a picture of it and then popped it right into Jamboard. I actually saved a copy of that picture. So as you can see, I saved a copy of this picture. Right now it's in Google Drawings. And so what I did is I just added these little boxes in here because I felt that was really helpful. And what I can do in Google Drawings is I can then download it. So I'm going to download this as a picture. Okay. Then I'm going to go into Jamboard, and this button right here is really helpful. You can add an image. Now you could do your own Google image search if you want. You can search your own photos. You can even search Google Drive, or you can upload content. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to upload content. And so here we go. Here's my Jamboard. So I can increase the size if I'd like. And so I'm going to zoom back out just a little bit so we can span this just a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. I'm going to zoom right back in, and voila. So let's talk about the water cycle. There's a couple different ways that I could work with this. I could write on this. So this part right here is all about precipitation. Okay, so I could write on there. I'm not the greatest when it comes to writing on trackpad, so perhaps I could use this right here, a text box, instead. And so, maybe what it's going to do is it's going to condensation. Oops. Oh my goodness. I'm not the greatest when it comes to spelling things. But basically what you can do right here is you can go through and type that in. Now, another thing that you could add as well to add some more interactive components is, let's say, for instance, you wanted to maybe have some movable objects in here. Maybe we want a sun, maybe we want a cloud to showcase this particular phenomena. So I'm going to go and create a brand new Jamboard. I'm going to go right here to add an image, and I'm going to do a Google image search. And so I'm going to do a sun. Now, you have all these pictures that pop up, but did you know that Google does offer these tools where you can look for clip art, and maybe I want to look for orange. I can go through and do that. Oh, here's an orange sun. So I can go ahead and I can select that. I can add that object. So let's add that object over here, and let's look for one more thing, and that's going to be clouds. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and look for clouds that are clip art. And I don't want orange, I want white clouds. So here's a white cloud. All right, so now what I could do is, let's say, for instance, I have all the different components here of the water cycle. And I want students to show how the water cycle works. I could merely go here. I could make multiple slides for students to go through and fill out. Now, just a little word to the wise, you would probably want to pre-assign a slide number to each student. There's a variety of different tools out there. There's random group generators that you can find in Google Sheets if you do just simply a Google search. And what it will do is it will give each group a group number. What I would recommend doing is getting rid of these guys right here. And let's say that I have 4 groups, okay? Group number 1, you're working on slide 1. Group number 2, you're working on slide 2. And they can go ahead and they can move these objects around on the Jamboard, and you can watch them as an educator simply by doing this. You can get a preview of what they're doing. You can see who's on which slide. And it's just a great way to help them have an interactive component. So maybe what you do is you have them predict what the water cycle is going to look like And you just simply go back up here to share. And let's say to do that activity, obviously, you're going to have them be editors. Let's say that time's up. You can then go right here, make them view only, hit done, and now you can talk about it, and they can't change anything on the slides. Much like Google slideshow presentations, you can do the exact same thing. So that could be helpful for you to use. There's a variety of different tools that you can use. Also backgrounds. Don't forget, you can change your backgrounds around a little bit too. Here is an example that I wanted to show you where I drew this. I actually drew this, and I drew the waves. I added the hill. All this was a rectangle. I added the hill. And now what the students are doing is they're using some of the drawing tools to showcase the process. That would actually be a better example of how to do it. Or this is another bonus idea. You could create something like we just created, something that you see right here, and record yourself using the Jamboard to describe the process of the water cycle. So you could use Screencastify to simply showcase this in a visual way for students. Create your own flipped classroom video, have students watch this outside of class, and then when you're having live discussion, maybe have them recreate it. Maybe have them do something else with the water cycle. So it's not just limited to, say, live instruction. It can also enhance videos. So there's all sorts of different ways you could do this. You could demonstrate processes. You could summarize content, define vocabulary terms, reenact historical events in a really creative way. I mean, think about that. You could put a picture of a map down and say, for instance, you're talking about the 13 colonies and the battles that they had with the British, and you have pictures of George Washington and him on his boat in the Delaware. You could make that such an interactive video just simply by going in and taking a map, a picture of a map, putting it back here, just using this, and then just simply doing a Google search for George Washington in a boat or whatever it is that you want to do. And you can make it such a valuable experience, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. So the third idea is, like I said earlier, duplicating and collaborating. So here's an example of students doing perhaps a word problem of the day. And you have this particular problem that you want students to solve. And so you use the duplicate feature to then have students to actually take a slide and work on this particular problem. This would be a great way to facilitate learning in breakout rooms. It would be a great way to facilitate learning in tutoring sessions. It would be a great way to facilitate even live learning as well, or even asynchronous learning where students are assigned a slide and they have to add to it. So how could you use this? Well, grammar practice. If you're an ELA teacher, why not put a paragraph up on the slide and have students practice their editing skills, solving math problems, solving equations in science class, balancing equations, vocabulary practice, matching. You could put something where there's matching, sample test questions, and even illustrating concepts. But I love this part, crowdsourcing ideas with Post-it notes. So maybe you don't want to necessarily use Padlet. You don't want to put a link all over the place. No worries. You could crowdsource ideas with the Post-it note feature. So how does that work? Well, you could have students, once again, you want to probably go up here to share. You'll want to have anybody with the link. They're going to be able to edit. Once they're able to edit, they're going to go in and they're going to add Post-it notes or sticky notes. They can add as many as they want. So you can keep on adding Post-it notes here. So I'll just add a couple. And let me just add, I'll have to add text, sorry. And I can keep on brainstorming some ideas. So let's think about maybe some characteristics of mammals. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll brainstorm some characteristics of mammals here. And as you can see, there's one characteristic. There's hair, feeds their young, they have live young, they're warm-blooded. And we're basically putting all of these Post-it notes on this Jamboard. And so now we can, put all the things that are the same. So like these are kind of the same right here. This is sort of different. We can start talking about it. Once again, I can go up to the share button here and I can say, all right, okay, everybody stop. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make you view only. So you can't make any changes. Let's talk about this. You could delete some of these. You can change the order if you want. So if you wanted one to pop forward, so I'll show you what this does. So the order, if I send it all the way to the back, it goes behind all of my Post-it notes. If I choose order and bring it all the way to the front, it brings it up front. So that's great for organizing things. But you can move these around and manipulate them. And so how might you do that? Well, here's an example, comparing and contrasting. So for example, let's say that you take some of those Post-it notes and you decide that you're going to create sort of a Venn diagram as you see right here. And you're going to just simply drag these objects or have students perhaps drag these objects to talk about the different characteristics. So how in the world would I do something like this? Well, first of all, when it came to doing the Venn diagram, okay, I'm just going to create a brand new slide here. With creating the Venn diagram, what you can do is you can draw, okay, an object here, and I'm going to just copy it and I'm going to paste it. Now, the problem is that you see, you didn't really create much of a Venn diagram because you don't see where they overlap. So you can simply go right up here to this paint bucket. You could change it a different color or you can make it transparent. And that's how I made the Venn diagram. Now, if you're like, I don't really want to do that on the fly like that, I'd rather prepare something on my own. Another way of doing it is simply doing it in Google Drawings and then downloading a copy as a PDF or a PNG and just throwing it in here as well. So, or you could find something online. So if you would rather find something online, you could do that as well. You could do that through here, going to add an image, or you could simply search for it elsewhere. So let's go back. Like, how did I get the mammals? Okay, so what I did is I went through and I actually found a picture of mammals. I'm going to use any type of picture right here, and I'm going to make sure that it's multiple colors. And so I found a picture, and I just added it to this Venn diagram. So it added some components to it, right? And so I can change the way that looks. I can change the size. I can move it around. The object is to get this information out there. The other thing that I did is I added sticky notes. So if perhaps you wanted to create pre-made sticky notes, so warm-blooded I know is one thing. I'm going to add that. And let's say that another sticky note was, they have hair and they feed young milk. Okay? So maybe I do that, and maybe I change that to blue. Okay. Now what I could do is I could actually have a lesson where I'm talking to the kids, maybe showing them on Google Meet, maybe sharing this link to them in Google Classroom. And you remember that duplicating trick? Maybe what I do is I assign this particular slide to different groups so that they can then move the stuff around and we can see what they're doing. Now, just like in Google Slides, just like in a Google Doc, like a Google Sheet, they can see what other classmates are doing. And yes, they can go and they can manipulate what other classmates are doing. So that's probably a good idea to have this up and running, kind of seeing what's going on. It'll show you who's on which slide, and you could actually see who did what. So if I move this, it'll actually show an initial right here with my name, and it'll show what I just did. Okay, so how could you use this feature? Well, you could use this feature for exit tickets. You could compare and contrast. You could check for understanding. You could assess background knowledge of students. Perhaps this isn't anything that's going to be graded. You just want to know what students already know. Brainstorming ideas. So perhaps we're going to be creating a project on the causes of photosynthesis. Perhaps we have students show what they already know about that. Maybe they're drawing a picture. Maybe they're adding a Post-it note. Maybe you have each student go and do a Google image search for a particular object that reminds them of what you're talking